What is going on, RP fam? Thank you guys for joining me for another video. It is one of my favorites I do each and every week. It is buy, sell, and today in this episode I have 3 buy and 3 sell options. These are guys that we are looking to buy at a discount after most likely a down week 1, as well as selling people who may have hit higher than we expected, and we can get top value for them now before that shoots down. A quick caveat here. This is week 1, people. So there are a lot of things that we don't know, a lot of things that we are still discovering. So many of the players that I am covering in today's video for my buys are ones that I liked coming into the year, and they probably just did not have a solid week 1. As for my sells, many of them are ones who I was not very high on coming into this season, and they may be banged for us in week 1, and now it is time to sell them off at their highest point before I believe they lose some value. I usually give you guys a player or 2 for each of my buys and sells that I would be looking to swap for them. However, it is really hard to gauge where people value certain players at this point in the season. So more likely than not, I'm going to give you guys a basic mid-range running back 2, high-end wide receiver 1, and whatever that means for you, that is what you should be moving for these players. Now, as the season progresses, we're going to know more, we're going to have a better idea of where people are ranked, and I will give you more concise people to be trading or buying off of. Final thing before we get started, I usually try to spread out my buys and sells to different positions. I didn't really realize until after I'd already written the piece that I had 5 running backs and just 1 receiver for my buy sells this week. So I am going to spread it out and try to hit more positions next week. Make sure you stop back in. With that done, let's hop right into it. No more delays. My very first buy is not going to be surprising to anyone. He is one of my favorite candidates to break out this year. It is rookie Jahmyr Gibbs for the Detroit Lions. I have been full speed ahead, no breaks, no stops on Jahmyr Gibbs and the hype train this offseason. That stance was merely cemented after that week 1 performance, and you might be wondering why that is, because the numbers didn't really pop for him. Just 42 rushing yards and 18 receiving yards, 60 total, and not a single score. And he actually tripped on himself on what would have been a walk-in touchdown. So clearly nothing special, nothing that we need to be looking for, right? Absolutely wrong. I am going to tell you why. Gibbs flashed exactly what I was hoping to see against the Chiefs. Explosiveness, that run after the catch ability, as well as an uncanny knack for breaking tackles. Ja broke a league high 6 tackles, and he did that on just 7 carries in week 1. So the opportunities are going to come. You do not keep a guy doing that off of the field long. If you've missed it during the offseason, which you shouldn't have been, make sure you like and subscribe so you don't in the future. The reasons why I love Gibbs is long. He's got 4.36 40 speed, and he was elite in the passing game as a college prospect. He ranked 2nd in PFF receiving grade during his first 2 collegiate seasons, and then he posted top 3 receiving yardage numbers for running backs in his final 2 years as well. So we have a huge sample size of him excelling in space. Now let's look at what he walked into in Detroit. Over 26 touches were available in the backfield after they lost multiple backs in free agency, and this was a team in Detroit that scored the most fantasy points per game in the backfield last year with over 500. That means that Gibbs is going to see at least 250 touches, and he has the easiest schedule of the entire league. Now you might be asking, how is he going to get all of those touches with David Montgomery in the fold? And I agree with you to an extent. Montgomery had 21 carries, so it is clear that the Lions want to keep him involved. But guess what? Just like I thought, Monty can take all of the low value touches. He does not scare me. He was 32nd in rush EPA last year, and in week 1, Gibbs averaged 6 yards per carry, and what did Monty do? Just 3.5. So he is not someone who is going to take the majority of the high value touches away from Gibbs, who has already showcased that explosiveness. Gibbs was top 5 in breakaway rate in 2022. Lots of touches in this offense. The explosiveness he shows, that equals fantasy goodness, and that is what Gibbs is going to bring to your lineup. He's doing all of this behind a top 5 offensive line as well. Detroit is one of the best run blocking units in the league. They're going to continue to open up space and give Gibbs opportunities for chunk plays. Now, if all of that is not enough to sway you, I'm not really sure that I can convince you, but I am going to try nonetheless. After Monday's game, head coach Dan Campbell stated that Gibbs' usage was minimal by design, and that moving forward that the Lions planned on cutting him loose. So in a few weeks, if not next week, Ja is going to be handling 12 to 15 touches or more every single week. His cost and production is going to skyrocket because of it. Gibbs is going to end this year as an RB1. I had him as RB11 in my preseason rankings. I believe in this guy for a breakout season. You're not paying anywhere close to that right now, so do what you have to do to get this guy on your team. The next buy that I am looking at is another player that I have been behind for multiple seasons, one of my favorites. It is T. Higgins. We're going to start with this. He goosed us in week 1. So week 1, all we want is a decent start out of our studs, and he goosed us. Not great, and I understand that, but there are plenty of reasons not to panic. Cincinnati was extremely rusty going into this game, about as rusty as you could possibly be. Obviously, Joe Burrow missed the entire preseason training camp with that calf injury, but that is not all that happened against Cleveland. The weather was absolutely atrocious, and that played into it as well. And probably more importantly, which sounds weird, but it is true, and it is just one of those things, the Cleveland Browns have the Bengals number in Cleveland. It's been like that for a while now, and it did not change this past week. Now, all of these factors, and of course Cincinnati playing a horrible game as well, made this brutal outcome for the Bengals fantasy owners in week 1, but there is hope, and I am here to tell you why. Higgy was the first player since Amari Cooper back in 2015 to post 0 catches on 8 targets. This game is a fluke, and it hasn't happened in almost 10 years to prove it. T also saw a ton of air yard usage here, over 150 yards, and he had a 95% snap share. Clearly, not only the usage, but the opportunities are there, and they are not going anywhere. Higgins also finished as the wide receiver 18 and the wide receiver 12 over the last 2 seasons. So the talent here is clear and is not in question. T. Higgins is also in a contract year. This dude is looking to get paid. You're not going to get paid by not producing. Forgive the pun, but he is about to tee off on the Ravens secondary. I understand that Houston was not able to threaten it, but this team is not the Texans. Cincinnati will, so get T. Higgins before he goes off. This guy has 6 touchdowns or more in all 3 years of his career. He also has the 4th easiest strength of schedule at the position in 2023. It is simple. Buy. Higgins is a wide receiver 2. He's got wide receiver 1 upside. Leverage the face plant from week 1 and get him at a discount. The next and final buy that I have for you guys is none other than Rhamondre Stevenson. Yes, it is Rhamondre season 2.0. He was one of my favorite targets to draft this year. To start this game against Philly, basically everything went wrong for New England against the Eagles. The game script for Rhamondre in week 1 really could not have been any worse. They're down 16-0. Look like they are dead in the water, but guess what? Stevenson was still usable. He had 18 touches, 90 total yards, and a 72% snap share. I think another big takeaway from this game is that Mac Jones threw for 300 plus yards against the Eagles. I did not know that was possible, and I'm sure that half of New England fans didn't either. Now, that type of performance elevates this offense. I do not believe that this is going to be something that happens often. Absolutely not. He might not even do it again this season. but the ability that he showed here gives us some hope and confidence that this Patriots offense is going to be at least a little better passing the ball than we expected and give Stevenson more room to run. Rhamondre tied the team lead with 64 receiving yards, and he also caught all 6 of his targets. One of the things I talked about all offseason was Stevenson getting that extra work in the passing game and that unlocking him even further. Well, we saw it in week 1. Rhamondre was top 5 in targets and catches at the running back position in 2022, and we saw a little bit of that get pulled away with Zeke Elliott, but I believe the role for Rhamondre will continue to grow, and this is why. Zeke had 5 catches, which is awesome for him, and he did it on 7 targets. And if you are a Rhamondre Stevenson owner, that is concerning for you because he is taking those valuable catches out of the backfield away. However, this is Zeke we're talking about, so let's just look at what he did with those targets. 5 catches, 7 targets, 12 yards. Not only did he only have 12 yards from those 7 targets, but guess what? The dude fumbled as well. Elliott is going to be losing out on those looks quickly, and he might lose some touches in the backfield as well because he can't hold on to the ball. We know that Wild Bill don't like that. Stevenson does nothing but force you to keep him on the field. This guy was a top 11 ranked back according to PFF in back-to-back seasons. We know he has the talent. We know that he's been able to carry a heavy workload. He was top 10 in touches, yards, and fantasy points last year. So no, I am not concerned with Zeke Elliott, just like I wasn't concerned with Zeke Elliott last year in Dallas. If you do not buy Rhamondre Stevenson now, you are not going to be able to. And the reason why is that he is about to torch the Dolphins' rushing defense, which all of a sudden might be one of the worst in the league. They got eaten alive by the Chargers last week. LA averaged 5.8 yards per carry in week 1, and they racked up over 230 yards on the ground. So Rhamondre has a legit path in this next game to going for a $150 plus, and he probably scores. He finished week 1 as the RB18. If you can get him close to that cost, make a move and do it now, because Stevenson is going to be extremely pricey after he crushes Miami in week 2. Now to my sells, and I'm going to start with someone who I was trying to help you guys avoid as draft season came forward. It is Dameon Pierce for Houston. Really ugly first game for him. 11 carries, 38 yards, and he had 2 receptions for 9 yards as well. Let's look at what happened in this game and why I am telling you guys we need to move off of Pierce now. Devin Singletary, brought in from Buffalo in the offseason, was spelling Pierce far too often in this game, and if that wasn't enough, Mike Boone was used solely as the 2-minute drill back as well, so both opportunities being taken away from Pierce. And because of that, he had just a 45% snap share in week 1. So what that is telling us is it looks like Pierce is more game script dependent than we would like, and especially for a team as bad as Houston, that is something that we want to avoid. Now, of course, he could bounce back. However, next up for these Texans is Indianapolis. They allowed just 3 yards per carry to the Jags. If you remove that 126-yard touchdown from Travis Etienne, they basically held them in check for most of the day. We know that Dameon is not a pass catcher. He had just 30 receptions last year, and Devin Singletary has more than that in each of the last 3 seasons. That is valuable work, and you want as much as you can get when you're taking a back from Houston that isn't going to have a lot of scoring opportunities. The other issue that we see with Pierce is his pass blocking ability is far from ideal, and Devin Singletary was brought in specifically for that purpose. This guy was a top 10 graded pass blocking back last year. Pierce was outside of the top 50. So who do you think the third down work is going to go to? Likely it'll be Singletary, which means Pierce loses out on point opportunities there as well. The O-line for the Texans wasn't great to start the year, and it just got even worse for them. They are already down 3 starters. Yet another reason to dump Pierce before things get worse. Now, I can admit there probably are not going to be a ton of buyers for Pierce after this week 1 game. When they're looking at those statistics, not going to be something that many people are interested in acquiring. However, we can look and point to last year's epic run where Pierce was a monster. They just added CJ Stroud. That is how you try to sell this guy. You are looking for some kind of mid-range RB2. If you can get somebody like James Cook, I would absolutely love that for you. Miles Sanders is my next sell. And this may surprise you, and it surprised me a little bit, to be honest, as I was looking into who I wanted to talk about for this piece. Now, 18 carries, 72 yards for him in week 1, not bad. 4 receptions on 6 targets for 26 yards, even better. Love the passing game usage. He totaled 22 touches, 98 total yards. Kind of feels like a bell cow, which is what I thought Sanders was going to be coming into the season and why I pushed for him as an RB2 option for us. However, let's dig a little bit deeper and see where we might find some issues. 57% snap share for him in week 1, a lot lower than you would expect. And within that snap share, he also ran routes on just 45% of Bryce Young's dropbacks. So though the touches were there, the snap share wasn't really, and the usage in the passing game, even though we had those 6 targets, was far from ideal. As for the RB2 job in Carolina, Chuba Hubbard played well. 11 carries, 69 yards, over 6 yards a touch. He's not losing any work because of that. Hubbard saw a lot of third down work, and he also had red zone usage over Sanders, both things that we do not want to see. If those kind of numbers continue and Hubbard starts to pull more work away from Sanders, all it does is lower his ceiling. The other reason that I am shying away from Sanders and suggesting selling him is this Carolina offense is probably worse than I expected, and I didn't think it was going to be great in 2023. Carolina's offense could easily be a bottom 10 unit in the league, and it's also doubtful that Miles Sanders keeps up that 19% target share that he had in week 1, especially when his snap share and his route running share is as low as it was. This passing game looks very pedestrian. Bryce Young clearly has some things to iron out in that, and there's no true number 1 receiver to threaten defenses or take the top off, which makes it even more difficult in the running game. Defenses are able to key in and focus not only on Miles Sanders, but on Bryce Young as well. That just makes it even harder on this offense, which means limited upside because there just is not a ton of touchdown equity in this Panthers offense right now. Now, I am not giving Miles Sanders away because, like I said, the touches are still going to be there, even if the value of them isn't great. But if I can get some kind of middle-of-the-road running back too for him, I am moving on to a better offense, and honestly, that is probably really easy to find. My final guy I am trying to sell off for a profit, or at this point really just to break even, is Derrick Henry. Now, week 1 clearly did not go as planned for the Tennessee Titans. 63 yards on 15 carries for King Henry, not bad, but we're used to him seeing 20+ touches in that backfield, so maybe the Titans are starting to lighten his workload a little bit. We saw him average over 23 touches per game last season for Tennessee. Now, what did the competition do for Derrick Henry? Well, Tyjae Spears had 27 yards on just 3 carries. So Spears having that kind of success, obviously in a very limited sample size, gives me a little bit of concern. But I think the most important thing that we learned from week 1 in regards to Derrick Henry's role in this offense is that Tyjae Spears ran double the routes that Derrick Henry did. Spears also had 4 targets in this game, and the biggest hit of all, he outsnapped Derrick Henry 54% to 48% overall. Something that we just did not expect to see in a million years in week 1 for this Titans squad. If they're trailing, which this is a pretty bad team, and they're probably going to be trailing more often than not, it's looking like Spears could handle more work, and I believe that he will as the season goes on and the Titans lose games. We see that Henry's volume is clearly threatened, not only in the passing game, but in the running game as well. We know that shrinks both his floor and his ceiling. And I think more importantly than him losing out on a little bit of work to Tyjae Spears, Tennessee's offensive line is an abomination. It is probably bottom 5 in the league. It could even be the worst unit in the NFL. That is not something that I get excited about when I'm starting a running back behind it. Finally, and maybe most damning of all, did you see what Ryan Tannehill looked like in week 1? This guy was 16 of 34. He had under 200 yards passing, no tutties, and a trifecta of interceptions. We know that this quarterback situation was already a nightmare before Ryan Tannehill tried to lose the job in week 1. But now what happens moving forward? We know Malik Willis could get a start, and also if Levis ever gets healthy, he's going to be considered an option as well. So I want out of this team, I want out of this offense if I can help it. Go get top 5 to maybe 7 value at the running back position for Henry right now, before everyone realizes that he cannot possibly succeed with his current surroundings. If you could pull somebody like Tony Pollard, who I absolutely loved coming into the year, then you are golden. And that is all I got for you guys. Hope you guys enjoyed the content today and you learned something, and that you can use this information to go make a move and make your team better. Drop any questions, any comments down below. I love to answer trade questions or start sits as well. Drop them in the comments. I will get back to you in a quick amount of time. Also, keep an eye out. I have start sit coming out tomorrow. I'm going to go over my final rankings for every position. So make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to the channel. That way you will not miss anything. This is Relentless Press. I am your host, Abraham Opatz, and I will see you next time.